Hi class, this is Dr. McGonigal with another Research Methods 2 lecture for you. Today we are going to learn and practice the basics of data cleaning and data management and SPSS software. You will also learn and practice how to compute descriptive statistics using SPSS. A couple important points before we begin. First, we will be using SPSS, which you should have downloaded to your computer, so see Canvas for more information on that. I suggest that you create a folder on your computer to save all of your files in, all of your SPSS files, and to save often so that you don't lose your work. Many of you will be learning SPSS for the first time, so feel free to reach out for help if you need it. There are also a lot of tools to help you online, including videos on YouTube. Just make sure that you know that SPSS will not open files unless your computer already has SPSS downloaded onto it. Make sure that in addition to watching this video that you're also reading your required class readings. And just as a reminder, because you've already learned statistics in your statistics course, we're focusing on applying them and using them in SPSS to test hypotheses in this class. SPSS is a statistics software that allows you to analyze quantitative numerical data. You can manually enter that data, meaning you can enter it by hand, by typing it in. You can also import it from a spreadsheet like an Excel file or an online survey system like Qualtrics. The use of syntax in SPSS does make your life easier, though it is not required. So you'll notice that throughout this video, I will show you options for either creating a syntax file based on what we call point and click, or to just simply hit OK after the point and click. So we'll talk about that later on in this video. One important thing to know is that SPSS has 3 file types. And when you're working on SPSS and you're analyzing data, all 3 of these will be open so that and it's important for you to know this so that you don't accidentally close out of files without saving them. So the first type of data file that you have is your actual data file. This is a .sav file. This is where your data is that you've typed in or that you've uploaded from Excel or from Qualtrics. The next is your output file, and this is where your results go. So when you run a computation, when you run an analysis, you automatically have this output file created for you, which is a separate file from your data file. And this is a .spv file. So when you're working on your data, make sure that you are saving your output files in addition to your data files. The third type is your syntax file, and this is where you can either type in commands, what we call syntax, or you can have SPSS automatically create code for you and save it in that syntax file. And this is an .sps file. To create an SPSS dataset manually, you can open SPSS and select type in data. And so you can just simply type data in if you want to see how that works. You can also copy and paste data from another file this way too. We're not going to do that today, but certainly feel free to try that on your own if you would like. Now, what you will be doing in this class is opening SPSS data files that already exist, that I have provided for you. So in order to do this, you want to double-click on an SPSS file to open an existing data set. So go ahead and pause the video now and try this with the demo data set, so it's called demo number 1, on the Canvas module page. And when that data file opens, it should look like this. So you have a data set with variables age, gender, test score, and self-efficacy. So go ahead now and download that data set, save it to your computer, and go ahead and open that data set. Okay, so hopefully by now you have your data set open. And what we need to talk about here is that you have 2 viewing options to view your data. So you can see that the viewing options are listed near the bottom left of your screen. So you have here your data view and your variable view. And what I have here is 2 differing views. So this first one on the left here is your variable view, and the second one on the right is called your data view. And the reason for this is that you have one page, your variable view, which has information about your variables, and we'll go through all of that information in just a moment. Alternatively, you can look at your data view and see the actual numbers or the actual data that are associated with those variables. So the variable view gives you variable information, data view gives you your actual data to look at. And just another reminder that your data files are .sav files. So you can see that here at the top left of each of these screens that they are .sav files. So let's talk a little bit more detail about what is involved with the SPSS variable view. Okay, so starting here on the left, you can see that we have 4 variables in this data set. The first variable is named age, the second variable is named gender, the third variable is named test score, and the fourth variable is named self-efficacy. Variable names do have to have certain types of characters. So you can see here that I don't have any spaces, so there's no space between test and score, and there's no space between self and efficacy. That's important. SPSS doesn't let you have spaces in your variable names. All right, so what is the next thing here? We have type. So data should be numeric for analysis purposes. If you have any text data in a data file that you're working with, for instance, if you have an open-ended place for people to type in their comments, those are labeled string. So you can actually go ahead and click into your variable view and click on to see what some of the other types of variables are. So for instance, you can specify if a variable is a date. But for the purposes of this class, I think 90% of the variables that you'll be using are numeric. The width is the number of characters that are allowed for the number of decimal places that you have. So it defaults to 8, so that's what we see here, and you won't have to change those for anything in this class. The decimals tell you the number of decimal points displayed. So if I wanted to have 2 decimal points for age displayed, this would be correct. I could also change that to 3 or 4 if I wanted to have more decimal places. I suggest in most cases for this class that you focus on just 2 decimal places for your reporting. For gender, it doesn't make sense to have any decimal places, right? Because you'll see that I have labeled gender 1 or 2, 1 for male and 2 for female, but I don't need to know whether it's 1.00 or 2.00, so I have 0 decimal places for that variable. Like I said, in general, you probably want to just have 2 decimal places. The label is where you can enter in more detail about your variable. And the labels do not have the same restrictions that you do have on your variable names. So you can type spaces in your labels, you can type anything that you want really in there. So for the variable age, the label is age of participant. For the variable name gender, I have it labeled as gender identity, and so forth. The values are where you designate values for categorical variables and in some cases numeric variables. So we're going to go into this in a little more detail in just a moment, but you can see for gender we have numbers associated with male and female and non-binary as well. Missing is referring to if you want to designate a missing number value. So you could, for instance, designate 999 or 9999 as indicating a missing response for that item rather than just leaving it blank. So if you do that, you want to make sure that you designate that 999 or 9999 equals missing data. Otherwise, if you do something like run a mean analysis on your data, you could get some really crazy results because it will think that 999 is an actual number. So you have to tell SPSS that that is indicating that the response for that is missing. Okay, so the rest of these are mostly things that don't matter too much and that you can kind of leave as the defaults. The one other thing I want to point out is measure. Measure tells SPSS what type of variable that you have. So if you have a categorical variable in your data set, you might want to classify it as nominal. Numeric variables in your data set can be classified as ordinal or scale. So how about you take a turn now and try entering some data? So create a new variable in the data set that you have open that indicates whether the participant owns a pet. So we want the variable to say 0 for not owning a pet and 1 for owning at least one pet. So go ahead into your data view and add zeros and ones to indicate whether or not the participant owns a pet. You can go ahead and pause the video. All right, so let's talk now about values. So in the variable view, the values, like I said just a minute ago, tell you what each number means. So we might not remember, for instance, that we had said 0 is does not own a pet and 1 is owns at least one pet. So we need to make sure that we document that in SPSS and provide that label for it in the variable view. So I'm going to show you in the next 2 slides how to go about doing this, and then I'll demonstrate it in the SPSS file for you. So in order to add value labels, you want to go into your variable view, and you can see here that I have a new variable named pet that I have added to my data set, and my label is owns a pet or not. And the values, here's where I want to click on add value. So you click just anywhere in this values thing for pet. That allows you to enter the values. And once you do that, a box will open up that looks like this, value labels. And you can type in the number 1 and type in the label owns at least one pet. And then you click add and you do the same thing for 0. 0, type in 0, then 0 means does not own a pet, type add. And then when you have both of those labels added, you click OK. Okay, so let me now demonstrate this in SPSS for you. Okay, so here's my SPSS file. So I would like to go in and add a variable for pet. So I'm going to type the name pet into my variables. You can see that it will automatically populate with a lot of the different things that we talked about just a moment ago. I'm going to change the decimals because I don't need to know decimal places because it's a categorical variable. I'm going to type in a label, whether or not the participant owns a pet. For the value labels, here's where we are adding those value labels. So 0 means no pet. Oops. And I click add, and then 1 is at least one pet. Click add, and then click OK. All right, because my measure is nominal, I'm going to select nominal. Then I'll go into my data view, and let's say person 1 has a pet, person 2 does not, person 3 does not, person 4 does. I'm just arbitrarily making this up just to show you how it would look. Okay, so now I have my variable of pet. Getting back to the slides, you should know that you can rename variables if you want. So you can retype in new names if you want to create new variable names. What makes a good variable name? Well, I mentioned earlier that you cannot have any spaces in your variable names. Also, SPSS does not allow you to start with a number. So you couldn't say like 1 age. Also, you want to keep it short. This is just a personal preference, but when you're typing a lot of syntax, it's better if you have relatively short variable names. Okay, so let's wrap up this section of the video with a knowledge check. So check your knowledge on SPSS so far by pausing this video and answer the following questions. And then once you're done, you can check your answers on the next slide, no peeking. So go ahead and pause the video now and answer questions 1 through 5, and then check your answers on slide 14.